Could it be that aliens are secretly running our society and are using subliminal messages that the human eye can't see in order to control the human race? Well, that's what the movie They Live would have you think. Released in 1988 and directed by John Carpenter, They Live tells the story of John Nada. And he's here to chew bubblegum and kick ass, but he's all out of bubblegum, as the down-on-his-luck hero discovers an advanced pair of sunglasses, which allows him to see the world for what it truly is, a society made up of hidden instructions, which unknowingly enslaves its people, ordering them to obey, consume, reproduce, and conform. And that those who seem to be higher up in society are also strange aliens who are in control of this subliminal takeover of the human race, in which Nada and his construction co-worker Frank must help expose the aliens and free the human race from its enslavement mind control. In this otherwise fun, cheesy 80s movie, which actually intellectually reflects real-life issues on how easily the high powers of society and media can control people's minds in order for them to keep their power. Well guys, welcome to the one video where people can't complain for me wearing sunglasses. Yes, that's right, my top 10 things that you didn't know about They Live. The classic John Carpenter film that takes a cheeky swipe at the Reaganomics of the 1980s. So, with that, let's check it out.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Number 10. Roddy Piper got the role because John Carpenter was a fan of wrestling. In the early days of the production of They Live, John Carpenter had considered casting Kurt Russell in the role of the main lead Nada. But he was slightly hesitant, as Carpenter had now worked with Russell on Escape from New York, The Thing, and Big Trouble in Little China. So he decided to go with a fresh face that he had never worked with before. Piper was a well-known wrestler at the time, and being a fan of wrestling, Carpenter wanted to cast Roddy Piper after watching WrestleMania 3, and met up with Piper to discuss casting him in the movie. The irony being that Carpenter was a fan of Piper's, but Piper had in fact never heard of Carpenter, despite Carpenter's more than impressive list of movies that he directed, including of course Halloween. Number 9. The movie's screenwriter doesn't exist. In the movie's credits, the scriptwriter is credited as Frank Armitage. But if anyone out there wanted to have an interview with Armitage to discuss his time working on They Live, they may have a bit of a problem doing so, as Frank Armitage simply doesn't exist. Nope, he is in fact a cover name used by John Carpenter, as Carpenter was the movie's real scriptwriter. The name was used because Carpenter did a lot of work on his own movies, and in the credits he's often cited as director, producer, scriptwriter, and score composer. So, in other words, when John Carpenter makes a movie, he goes all out. And it was a worry that Carpenter may look a bit egotistical with his name being blasted all over the credits. So to prevent that, pseudonyms were created to cover other roles that he performed on in the film. Number 8. The most expensive scene to shoot. Considering there are many special effects in the movie, it may be hard to guess which scene did in fact cost the most to make. Well, by all surprise, the most expensive scene to shoot in the movie was in fact the grocery store scene, on the account that a grocery store had to be built specifically for this scene, as it had to be able to accommodate the bottles and other brands with their alternative subliminal labels. As I'm guessing it would have been too impractical to go to a real grocery store and empty the shelves and replace the products with alternative ones. So to fix the issue, hey, they just built their own grocery store. Problem solved.
You're okay. This one, real fucking ugly.
Look, I know this is off subject, but why are groceries called groceries? They're not even gross. Shouldn't they be called yummeries? Number 7, the famous bubblegum line was ad-libbed. The most memorable and celebrated moment in the movie seems to be when the Nada character enters the bank after discovering the truth with his enhanced sunglasses, as he turns up with a shotgun looking all badass and says the famous line,
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubblegum.
Well, believe it or not, but this was something that Roddy Piper made up on the spot there and then. And, well, I'm guessing the ad-lib dialogue stayed on the account of how badass it is. I mean, come on, who wouldn't want to chew bubblegum and kick ass? That's the embodiment of human happiness right there. Number 6, inspiration for the fight scene.
Be happy, don't worry, be happy now.
In They Live, there is a mad, epic, insane fight scene that feels like it goes on for an eternity. Well, actually 5 minutes and 20 seconds to be precise. Yep, a whole 5 minutes plus of watching two guys beat the living shit out of each other. In a scene where Nada tries to convince his friend to put on the sunglasses, where he refuses, which ends in the epic brawl, which I think is meant to be a reflection on how people don't want to know the truth about those who pull the strings of society, and would rather just live in ignorant bliss.
Either put on these glasses or start eating that trash can.
This movie punch-up was so insane, it took a whopping 3 days to shoot. But interestingly enough, Carpenter took inspiration from a fight scene in the 1952 movie called The Quiet Man, in which a young John Wayne and another actor get into a good old punch-up. But even though The Quiet Man might have inspired the fight scene in They Live, the fight scene in They Live is still much more epic.
Now hold on. You ain't the first son of a bitch to wake up out of their dream.
Number 5, European title change.
Don't worry. Be happy.
It's not an uncommon practice for when movies get shown in other parts of the world that they would have their titles changed. This is something that happens all the time and is still happening to this day. And They Live is no exception, as its European title is Invasion Los Angeles. Which is an interesting title, as it kind of gives away exactly what's happening. One of the great things about seeing They Live for the first time is discovering with the Nada character exactly what is happening and just how crazy it all is, to discover humanity is being enslaved by indulgent aliens. Whereas the title Invasion Los Angeles sets up straight away that there is an invasion, thus taking away that mystery for first-time viewers. I also find the European poster interesting too. Is it just me, or does it look like a poster for a Chuck Norris film or something? Number 4, the reason the aliens look more like zombies. Have you ever noticed that the aliens in They Live don't exactly look like aliens, but more like rotting humanoid corpses? This is because when designing the aliens for the movie, they didn't want them to look like a high-tech advanced alien race, but more like a decaying, corrupted version of humans, to emphasize the deceitful nature of these aliens. They are not meant to represent the corruption of an advanced species, but rather the corruption of us. Which, when you think about it, makes the concept of these aliens much more disturbing. And maybe I'm wrong, but in the scenes in particular that are black and white when we see the aliens, I can't help but feel like it's somehow paying homage to George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead. Number 3, They Live and the Election. They Live was scheduled to be released on October the 21st, 1988, but its release date was pushed back to November the 8th. It's popular belief that this was done to avoid competition with the release of Halloween 4, ironically a franchise also started up by John Carpenter. But the real reason the release was pushed back to November 8th is that that was the day of the American presidential election. And given the nature of the movie and its views on governmental corruption and the Reaganomics of that time, it was decided it was necessary to release the movie on that particular date. The date that would see Ronald Reagan end his time as president and leave the White House, giving They Live more symbolic meaning. Number 2, the idea of the movie came from a comic book. Indeed, John Carpenter got inspiration for They Live from a comic book called 8 O'Clock in the Morning, which then got remade into another comic called Nada, which is a comic that pays homage to those science fiction comics of the 1950s, in which the main character George wakes up from hypnosis, only to see that society seems to be run by grotesque lizard monsters, and that he is the only one that can see them, as the creatures are controlling human perceptions for their own gain, just as with the movie. So, They Live gets its themes of corruption and democracy and the power of advertisement from 8 o'clock in the morning. And what ties the stories even more close together is the main character Nada from They Live is named after the main character, George Nada, from 8 o'clock in the morning. See, peoples, never underestimate comic books, and just how much they can influence and inspire great creativity. Number 1. Roddy Piper thought the movie was based on a true story. Okay, we've saved the funniest for last, as Roddy Piper had frequently been vocal about how They Lived is in fact based on a true story, and even expressed this view on the Blu-ray commentary track.
I'm trying to save you and your family's life.
You couldn't even save your own!
Piper saw a 1978 documentary called La Affaire Brunswick, which was about a brand of TVs brought out in the 1950s, which sent out subliminal messages to women to buy expensive products. Piper maintained this theory that They Lived is based on this event for years. Sadly though, Piper didn't know that the movie is a comedy. Yeah. Whoops. Yeah, poor Piper. But hey, maybe then again he knew this and that he was just trolling people and tricking us into believing something, which definitely would go along with the themes of They Live. But either way, Piper was a great and fun presence in They Live. Well guys, that was my look into They Live. The movie that teaches us not to just accept things at face value, and to question everything and be alert of the powers that control society. Anyway, I'm Minty and I'm off to chew some bubblegum, and when I've chewed up all the bubblegum, I'm gonna kick some ass. See ya.